Greg Kelly Show.
Hey, not that it matters, such a stupid little issue, but we have to confront these, I guess, from time to time. Remember, the whole damn world is falling apart, right? We have no border. We have the sexualization of children happening all over the place. We're getting into pointless foreign wars, inflation out of control, social order and norms disintegrating. Kamala Harris is an unserious person with zero accomplishment to her credit, nothing. Yes, she is a DEI hire, all that stuff. She's not that particularly important, as we heard from Vivek Ramaswamy the other night. And if you don't mind, let's go ahead and get that Vivek stuff ready, okay? Vivek called in on Friday and said, basically, look, she's the front person, okay? It's everything else. It's all of the other things that the left is pushing right now. This communist ideology, this weird gender mess, all of that stuff, and the globalism. These are the threats, okay? Meanwhile, they want to make it about what JD Vance said the other day. Okay, well, look, if you're listening, you and I, we agree about this stuff, right? I mean, it's indefensible. The transgender nonsense in children, not having a border, the economy mismanagement, and yet another broken down career politician who's probably on something. I'm not being mean. I'm saying, Kamala, if you have a problem, and I think you do, you should call me or call somebody you know, somebody you trust, because a person not under the influence does not act like you. All right? Fair enough? Fair enough. So Vance said something, and by the way, he's totally correct. He's totally correct. This whole thing about not having children, you realize what he was getting at is not, a single woman who really wants to get married. You can't find a guy because there's so many toxic bachelors out there, or the couple that's married and they try and they can't have kids, right? Not talking about that stuff. Or just somebody who opts to have a single lifestyle. No, none of that. There's actually a movement. It's an offshoot of globalism to not have children because it's better for the environment. Yep, a lot of Hollywood celebrities, a lot of people in academia pushing this thing that it's like China. Remember, China had they actually had a one-child policy. To some extent, they still do because they got so many people over there. They didn't want families with multiple kids, so it was the one-child thing. And oh, by the way, well, look, everybody's got issues. My brother used to hang me up from the chinning bar, for crying out loud, with a pair of handcuffs. I love my brother, but man, oh man, everybody's going to get some sort of trauma, right? Growing up, you're traumatized if you have a big family, small family, only child, 8 kids. All of it's going to lead to something, right? That sooner or later you'll probably talking to your therapist about. So I was going to say that the only child, they're usually you can tell. There's always something a little bit. I can tell at least, but again, I can tell. I've got my own issues. Everybody's got issues. He was talking about people saying, we're not going to have kids because of the environment. All right. Or we don't want kids because, we like having too much of a good time and we don't want a kid, kind of holding us back. Basically, when you look at the human body, you look at the brain, you look at all of our impulses, you look at all of our body chemistry, everything about us, everything about human existence is geared toward having children. Like it or not, that's the biology of it all. That is the biology. It's why men achieve. It's why women put on makeup in the morning. I'm sorry, it is. There is something about, at a primal level, right? Why do lions and tigers do what they do? They do it because it's all about mating. It's all about keeping the species going. And when you decide consciously that you're not going to be a part of that, well, it leads to it can lead to a lot of negativity. When you decide that having children is not the point of existence, but sexualizing children somehow is, or rearranging it's actually interesting. A couple of years ago, I remember Hillary Clinton would talk about fighting for families, fighting for America's families, families first. And as somebody at the time who did not have a family, I remember on Father's Day feeling a little bit like, I remember on Good Day New York, somebody said there was a big cooking segment, and Greg, tell me about your children. I don't have any yet. Oh. It was a thing. And I didn't blame anybody. I didn't like, oh, how dare you make me feel less than. But life, you're gonna feel like that sometimes. You just, not everything's perfect. Life isn't always kind or sweet. So what do these say? What is the big thing? And I don't even think this is the big thing, but this is what they're trying to get him in trouble over. JD Vance, all-around superstar, the Hillbilly Elegy, which I know I have to watch, although I don't really want to watch it, to be honest. I don't want to sit down and watch Hillbilly Elegy. I kind of know what it's about already, and I'm sure it's great, but I don't want to watch it. But I guess I'm going to have to. Just like I forced myself to read those Barack Obama books. I did. And I like JD Vance. I like him a lot, but I still don't want to watch Hillbilly Elegy. But anyway, what did he say that's so controversial? Go ahead.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it?
So what's the deal? Is that the worst thing in the world? Hey, by the way, I just got a message from Sid. Sid! Looks like President Trump is going to be on tomorrow morning at 8:40 in the morning. 8:40 in the morning, President Trump. Hello, Sid. I love you. You're great. You're totally great. And Mr. President, welcome back. That is going to be great. We love Sid. We love President Trump. 8:40 a.m. right here on WABC. Good luck with that, Sid. It's going to be great. And we'll play the clips a little bit later on. Elise Stefanik is also a total brainiac. I like her a lot. Congresswoman from upstate New York. I just, is that the word? No, it's not that bad. And by the way, there's a difference between a cat lady and a woman with a cat. A woman with a cat is a woman with a cat. Nice, healthy, you have a pet, that's great. Like a person with a dog, person with a cat. We had a cat growing up for a little while. Cat ran away. No love lost. It was moody and aloof. Moody and aloof. And it didn't, but a cat lady is basically an hysterical woman who hoards cats, right? 75 cats. That's a cat lady. And I don't think we have to defend the cat ladies. You call the services. You call county services to respond to the cat lady because she's at risk. She's at potential harm for herself and the cats. That's what he's talking. He's not talking about a woman with a cat. And what's the other thing here? Oh, so this is what he originally said, hey, if you are struggling to have kids or whatever, if this is your choice, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about these control freaks in the government. Go ahead.
Look, a lot of people are unable to have kids for very complicated and important reasons. I know good friends of mine who have struggled to find the right girl, find the right guy. There are people, of course, for biological reasons, medical reasons, that can't have children. The target of these remarks is not them. It's important to point that out. Think about all those people. The names are obvious. They're well-known people. Kamala Harris, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who's now the Secretary of Transportation, Cory Booker, AOC. Think all these people. They're different. They come from different walks of life, different parts of the country. What is the one thing that unites every single one of them? Not a single one of them has any children. Why is this just a normal fact of American life? That the leaders of our country should be people who don't have a personal and direct stake in it via their own offspring, via their own children and grandchildren.
So I think he's right. Now, you can have that connection even if you don't have kids, but it's okay. It's not controversial to say. I heard it all the time when I was single, and I kind of get it now. When you have kids, it really does clarify things, and it changes your focus, and it makes you a little bit more, I don't know, tolerant of, it makes you above the drama. You kind of like, I remember one time I was at work and something happened. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe you said this to me. Oh my God, what did you, I am going to do. And now it's like, okay, it's just, you're focused on the mission at hand because you know it's your responsibility to provide for human beings. I totally get it. And by the way, it's not radical. It's not. You ever see the show Sex and the City? There's a whole scene where Carrie, she ultimately marries Mr. Big, even after Mr. Big did not show up at the wedding. Let's face it, that's unforgivable. Mr. Big, Chris Noth, is that his name? Left Carrie at the altar by herself because he just wasn't ready. He decided that he just could. I mean, at that point, pal, you go through with it and you get divorced because a divorce, there's less stigma. It's less traumatizing for everybody than not showing up. And Big at that point had been married like 3 times. So Big doesn't go to the wedding. And I can't believe that Carrie ever took him back, but they did, and they get together. And guess what? They decide not to have kids. And then like half the movie is them going around to parties and being ostracized because, oh, you don't have kids? Like you're not trying for kids? Oh. And that's New York City, everybody. That's leftist New York City. That's left-leaning New York City. It was kind of all about that. And the idea that they're trying to take that out of the table, off the table, or it's kind of sick. Now, I'll say this about AOC. AOC has plenty of time left to have children. Hey, I was in my late 40s before the kids showed up, before I had kids. My wife, my goodness, thanks God for medicine and IVF and all that stuff. We did all that. All that, and the freezing and I had to go and I had to do my part. You know what I mean? We tried the old-fashioned way, and then we needed the assistance of science. Oh, boy, did we try. You can't run him out of the race, or can you? They're pretending that this is the worst thing that anybody ever said. Meanwhile, Kamala, I guess we have to. Sooner or later, I'm going to have to. I can't believe that anybody in the world would take her seriously. But $5 billion of free airtime, they might just pull it off. Could they? I don't think so. I feel like this is 1988 all over again. 1988, coming out of the Democrat convention, Michael Dukakis had a 17-point lead over George H.W. Bush. 17 points. Remember, he selected Lloyd Benson, the senator from Texas, and what happened? Well, he was a crazy liberal. He believed government could do no wrong, and then he went for a ride in that dopey tank with that dopey hat on. He looked like an idiot, and everybody said, you know what? This guy is not commander-in-chief. This guy is a weird technocrat, and we don't want him in. And George H.W. Bush, speaking of, well, we see the world a little bit differently now, but talk about a deep stater, huh? George H.W. Bush. Anyway, he had his good points. If you don't think the CIA and the FBI had a role in what happened to Donald Trump the other day, and it doesn't have to be an overt. It doesn't have to be overt. It could be very sly. I want to go to Mike Lee, Senator, Republican from Utah. It just said something so profound over the weekend. Let me see here. Hey, did you see the disgusting mess in Paris? The disgusting satanic mess? What the hell was that all about? What was that? Well, it was about a satanic mess. These people are Satanists. This election right now is good versus evil. It's good versus evil, law and order versus chaos, decency versus depravity, strength versus weakness. All that stuff is on the table. Right now they're trying to say that, what's his name, is a weirdo. Vance is a weirdo. Did you see the topless transgender orgy they had at the White House? That's not weird. Vance is not weird compared to that. Vance is not weird, period. Mike Lee is making the connection that what happened to Trump is very much like what King David did to Uriah and sending him into danger on purpose, knowing that he would be unprotected. Do you think there's something to that? I sure as hell do. Be right back. Hey, Rick Schroder is going to be joining us. Ricky Schroder, the great actor. He's also a great conservative, and he is first of all, big supporter of veterans. And Kyle Rittenhouse, remember that? Remember how they were trying to railroad him? Special appearance from my friend Rick Schroder coming up.
Greg Kelly. is the Greg Kelly Show.
There's new video. I just saw it a few moments ago of the cops surrounding that building, what they call it, the AGR building, where the shooter Crooks is on top of. This is like 2 minutes before the guy starts shooting. Cops on the ground are surrounding the building at some distance, like 50 feet away. So it's a fairly low building. It's like they're backing up so they can get a good view of the roof. And you hear Trump talking away in the background, and everybody seems to know that there's something going on with the building, including the cops. But instead of charging the building and climbing up on top of the roof, which can't be the hardest thing in the world, or going into the building and taking the stairs, or they're just kind of backing up and trying to see what they can see on top of the building, and then they walk. There's just not an adequate sense of urgency, but everybody seems to understand something is going on, and they're just kind of casual about it, but it's also a heightened sense at the same time. This is a couple of things. You may have seen the video already where people are kind of yelling and screaming, "Hey, there's a guy up there. Hey, hey, hey." Remember that? That was interesting because, well, the civilians, people not in uniform, noticed that something was wrong, and they were yelling, "Officer, officer." But now we have video where you actually see officers who seem to be aware that there is something going on. And two things are notable. They either couldn't or wouldn't inform the Secret Service that something was going on. Maybe they had the ability, and they did. We don't know that. Maybe they did and told the Secret Service about it. Although, according to their own testimony, they couldn't. They didn't have contact with them. And if they did, I mean, can't you call somebody who could call somebody? And why aren't you charging the building? So they're circling the building a little bit, like 2 or 3 officers, and they're backing up to see if they can see on the roof. And then finally they go forward, and then shots ring out. But it's a 2-minute thing. You can hear Trump speaking the entire time, and you think, why can't they tell? Why can't they give a signal? Get him the hell off the stage. Wow. That's bad. That's really, really, really bad. And I'm suspicious of everybody and everything, including the guy who decided not to show up to work that day. Sorry, I don't know his name, but it's okay. We should be suspicious of everything and everyone, especially the United States government. They have gotten too big. They are unchecked. They actually, not only presidents, Congress, everything, they think they are more important than the people. And we have a big problem on our hands.
You're listening to The Greg Kelly Show.
Well, it's been many decades since Ricky Schroder became household name famous with his appearance in The Champ with John Voight. Since then, many roles and also some political activism that I think is totally fantastic. He's been very supportive of the troops. So many interesting documentaries about what's happening right now in the world, especially with America's military and fighting men and women. And he has been popping up in some really interesting places. He was advocating for Kyle Rittenhouse and others unfairly accused, and he's got something special to tell us about. First of all, Ricky Schroder, welcome to WABC Radio. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Oh, Greg, I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me, and hello to your great audience. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, and thank you for what you're doing with Real American Heroes Foundation, realamericanheroesfoundation.org. We'll get to that in a little bit. But first, Ricky, do me a favor. Tell us who Tina Peters is. I've heard the name. I know she's a clerk in Colorado, and she's in big trouble right now.
Yes, that's right. Tina, she was Mesa County clerk. She was in charge of securing the vote and the elections for our county. She's one of like 5,000 county clerks in our nation. And I feel like they're doing a show trial here and trying to make an example of this woman to keep all the other county clerks in line because there's another election coming up. And she's facing life behind bars for, in my opinion, doing the right thing. She didn't change any vote records. She just wanted to make a copy of the voting record that existed. And, there was a software update. You've heard of these Smartmatic internet-connected election machines. Those things are headquartered here in Colorado, that company. And so they have a lot of power in this state. And so Tina, she wanted to get a copy of the voting record, from what I know. And she didn't trust that the software update wasn't going to change things. And she takes her sacred oath to protect the vote very seriously. And so a fella came in, Greg, that I know, and I spent time with this fella myself back in November of 2020, looking at election fraud data with him, and Hunter Biden's laptop with him, and that fella came here and he took some pictures of the voting equipment, and he even texted me from the office that day.
Let me before we get into look, as you know, there's all kinds of litigation underway with these companies, and there are people out there who are prohibited from speaking about it. But I want to, so we have that going, and I understand. But
right.
She's charged. Essentially, I'm trying to figure out what she allegedly did wrong, and it's very kind of amorphous. It's like trying to influence an election, or trying to corruptly influence an election. That's very much in the eye of the beholder, I would imagine. And this actually made it all the way up to the Supreme Court. They were going to turn down this case, like throw it out. But I guess Neil Gorsuch said the case can continue. Well, I'm looking it up. I'm looking it up as you are. But what is she actually charged with?
Well, she helped secure the Mr. Woods was the guy that had the badge that she gave to another guy I know, and let him in to take the copies of the election equipment. Not to change any votes, Greg, but to protect the vote, because there was a software update coming, and she couldn't get it done. The company wouldn't let her do it, from what I understand. And so she did it on her own accord. Okay, the guy got caught doing it, but they didn't go after that guy, and that guy's a patriot as far as I know. He didn't set her up or do nothing wrong, but they don't go after that guy. They go after this woman who's a Gold Star mother, who's a patriot, and they're trying to make an example of her and put her away for the rest of her life.
So
she didn't change.
She didn't change any votes.
She allowed access, Greg. She allowed access to somebody, and the cameras got turned off while that access happened.
Now, here's what Colorado prosecutors, they charged Peters with 7 felony counts relating to attempting to influence a public servant, impersonation, and identity theft. Peters also faces several misconduct charges of official misconduct, violating her duties and failing to comply with the Secretary of State's requirements. This is the one that really concerns me in terms of, like, if they can wage this against her, you can wage it against just about anybody. Let's see here. Charged her with 7 felony counts relating to attempting to influence a public servant. I mean, every time I open, aren't you allowed to try to influence a public servant? It's called democracy, I thought, right? It sounds
Correct.
very, very weak to me and weird.
But there's a higher law, Greg. There's the higher law. You know, sometimes governments pass unjust laws, as we know, and people follow them. And this is she may have broken man's laws. I'm going to be in the trial sitting with her watching as much as I can for the next 12 days. But, even if you break man's laws, if you do it in the purpose and the calling of a higher law, then you should be innocent. And that's where I'm pleading for her on her behalf to everybody out there in this county, because they've had, I think, 700 articles written about Miss Peters of propaganda and just programming this community, this little farming community out here, Mesa County. There's 150,000 people here. Well, these people have been totally programmed, to believe she's this villain. And so I'm praying for the jury. I'm praying that we can get her, one person on that jury to understand there's a higher calling, and protecting the vote. There's nothing more sacred than protecting the vote. And like I said, she didn't change any votes. She just made a copy of the votes, and that pissed them off. And they're trying to make an example of her, so during this next election, all these county clerks will behave. And Tina's a hero. She's a real American hero.
Now
And
we have the man's law. It's interesting because, well, look, people can look at the law and see and have different interpretations of what it means. I mean, we have a Supreme Court, and we have very smart people who can look at the same Constitution and think it means the opposite. 5-4 decisions. We have them all the time. Now, we're obligated to follow the law. We are. But, it's there was up until not too long ago, people interpret it different ways. And I'm very suspicious of this case against her. Do me a favor. You said she's a Gold Star mom. What else can you tell us about her personally?
Well, she loves her dogs. Her dogs are her world, and her husband. Her husband divorced her on his deathbed, and she was influenced by some people because that's how dirty they are. That's how dirty they play, and so they influenced her husband to divorce her on his deathbed, and then he passed away not too long ago, and so. What else can I tell you about Tina? She loves Thai food. She was just over here the other.
She loves Thai food.
We had a Thai feast, and she is beautiful woman. I want to introduce her to John Boyd.
Hey, Rick.
I think
about
he's single?
There would be quite a couple. Rick, look, you are a real patriot. But you're active. You're active. I mean, how did that happen? I mean. Just tell us. I mean, look, I had a political awakening at some point. There's a story there, from what we remember. I mean, well, we know you throughout the years, but what
we were trained.
Go ahead, say that again.
Greg, we were trained, right? We were child models, and so I remember my mom once told me, Ricky, do you know between you were 5 years old and 6.5, you had 200 modeling and commercial jobs, Ricky, between 5 and 6.5. And I thought, wow, Mom, that's a lot. 200 modeling and commercial jobs between 5 and 6.5. So then I realized, Greg, it was training. It was training. Probably. This is I don't have hard facts or hard evidence, but it was a training ground because they then gave me the movie The Champ when I was 7, right? And so they trained me from 5 to 6.5 with all that work. And then, there was.
Well, train you for what, Rick? I feel what were they training you for? What do you?
Counter programming. I was a counter programming asset of theirs. I know that sounds out there, but
well, look, I'm listening. I mean, nothing's off the table right now because everything is so crazy and corrupt. And you saw what happened in the Olympics over the weekend. But counter programming to what? What were they trying to program you to be or not be?
Okay, so let me tell you how this developed real quick. We have a moment, right?
Yeah, sure.
So when the fellow that brought me Hunter Biden's laptop and the election fraud data in November 2020. When he brought me that information and sat with me for about 6 hours one night, it triggered a bunch of memories. And it had to do with somebody my father played tennis with named John Tolve, Tolve. And so anyways, I asked my parents about it, and they have no clue why John Tolve would, take me from the tennis courts into a classroom and have headphones and tape recorder with me. Because every Saturday I'd go from St. Joseph's by the Sea in Staten Island, New York, to play tennis with my dad. And from 9 to 12, I'd play tennis. But at some point, I'd be taken into a classroom with just myself. And it didn't just happen there, though. It happened at his home. It happened at my home. It happened other locations. And so this memories got triggered when the man that brought me Hunter Biden's laptop showed up at the house. And so I verified it with my sister because it happened to her too. The same. John Tolve was a retired NYPD detective. He spent 30 years on the force and was my dad's tennis partner. And so he's dead now. But my parents claim they have no idea why John would have done that with me. And so my mother, though, I can't speak with my mother. She's not allowed to speak with me. But my mother's last words to me were, tell Ricky that there was other kids in the program. She was yelling because I was talking with my dad. And she said, tell him there's other kids in the program. It wasn't just him. And I remember some of the other kids. And so,
let me just jump in for a second. And look, thanks. I didn't mean to spring all this on you or take you down this rabbit hole, but it's important, and I'm interested. What was this guy Tulvey doing with those headphones and you in a classroom? I mean, is that what he took? You said your father's tennis partner, and he would take you for hours at a time into. Go ahead.
Patriot. They were programming me with, believe it or not, if you look at St. Joseph's by the Sea, if you go onto their recreation room now, they're a high school in Staten Island. All the Revolutionary War motif was all in my room. My room as a child was decorated with George Washington and forefathers fighting the redcoats. And so my bedspread, my pillowcase, the art on my wall, it's the same art that was in the rec center of St. Joseph's by the Sea today. So I think that it had to do with the forefathers, the Constitution. It had to do with God. It had to do with, counter programming.
And wait, was Tulvey programming you in a good way?
I have no negative feelings towards Mr. Tulvey at all. Mr. Tulvey, I only think of in the fondest memory.
Well, it's all very interesting. This sounds like a book, movie, all of the above, a episodic podcast, but it's totally fascinating, Ricky. It really is. Listen, in the meantime, two questions. Yeah. How can people get involved with the American Heroes Foundation?
Well, you can submit a Real American Heroes to us, because we are not 501c nonprofit, and so we're trying to build this nation great and continue to fight to make this nation great. Those are the real American heroes, not what the Marxists in Hollywood are pushing. And so we have a couple films you can read on our website. You can read our screenplays and just sort of pray for us that we find the right people to start telling some real stories to change the programming coming out of Hollywood.
Well, you're already succeeding in so many ways, and the content that we have seen and the documentaries, they're awesome. And hey, by the way, how did you get the? You grew up in Brooklyn, Staten Island, but you sound like you are almost from the South these days. You spent a lot of time in the wilderness in a good way, right?
Well, yeah, I moved to Colorado when I was 20. And I still have the same place here on this ranch on the Gunnison River, and so I come back here, and life is good right now. I just got engaged. My kids are doing well. I can't be happier than my kids are doing good, and we have a great documentary we're working on called Erotic Erosion. I don't know if you want to have a second to talk about it, but I feel like while I got you, I just got to mention the porn problem.
Oh yeah.
It's a terrible problem, the pornography, and they never had the rights under the First Amendment to push it into our houses and phones. Freedom of speech does not include freedom of expression in pornography. As you know, the First Amendment, Greg, was for political speech, to be able to resist the powers of the day and not be thrown in jail. And then the courts defined it as freedom of expression to include pornographic images. That is not the actual text of our Constitution. And so English common law is what our colonies were founded on. And we have strayed so far from English common law. And it's time for us to reopen that chapter of American history and what is acceptable, public behavior and what is not.
It's fascinating. So anybody what? Sorry.
No, and so pornography, brother, when it was our generation that it came to first. In this way, before the camera was invented, you had to engage in perversion or witness it, and then the camera was invented, and then they've been pushing pornography to us ever since the camera was invented.
Rick, I'm afraid I got to go, Rick, but we got to have you back because it's so interesting.
All right,
it's fascinating in our culture today. You sound like a dissident. But you are speaking. You are exactly. You are. This is where we should be, where you are, and yet it's just fascinating, and we're blessed that you're involved and what you're involved in, and we want to know more about Tina Peters. We'll stay on that case. And oh, by the way, you can find some great content. The Fighting Season, that was done for DirecTV's audience channel, My Fighting Season, and The Volunteers about the Syrian war, and all the other work. Folks, you should go to RealAmericanHeroesFoundation.org. RealAmericanHeroesFoundation.org. It's all there. And Ricky, you'll keep us up to date, and we're going to do some work to get to the bottom of this Tina Peters thing and see what we can do, okay? I so appreciate you calling in.
And you have such a beautiful family. Congratulations. God bless you, Greg.
Thank you, sir. To be continued, and we will be right back.
Greg Kelly. This is the Greg Kelly Show.
That was cool talking to Ricky Schroder, and got to get to the bottom of that Tina Peters stuff. It's okay to ask questions about the 2020 election. It totally is. Gosh, it's amazing how they operate, isn't it? Let's go to Barbara standing by. Hi, Barbara. Oh, Barbara's not with us. Sorry about that. Is she okay? I certainly hope so. Ridley in Pennsylvania. Hi.
Greg, how you doing? I hope everything's okay with you and your family. Listen, I'll call you back tomorrow because you might want to hear what I have to say, but I need more time. But I just want to say, God bless Ricky Schroder and all the Ricky Schroders and the servants of this world, because they are the proverbial flies on the wall. What he just said was just awesome, from the pornography thing on up.
Yeah, we got to find out more. Ridley, you call me back because I understand you want to weigh in on the assassination stuff. So the attempted assassination. So definitely follow up, okay? Because it's a longer conversation. Vic in New Jersey. Hi. Yo, you there? Excuse me. Oh, the language. Good thing we have the bleep button. Bob, hello.
Hey, sir. Question, terminology. I know what wheels up on an aircraft is to get to one landing to another, but what does heels up with an H when they talk about Kamala Harris?
You know what it means, Bob. You know what they're getting at with that. Come on, don't play dumb. You know and I know what you know and I know what that means. Cut it out. All right, Bob? All right. And yeah. And you can say it out loud if you want. All right. Bob, thank you very much. Sandra, hello.
Hello, Greg. Greg, I have a question. My relatives moved to Israel in July, right this July, saying they want to be safer there. You know, it's not safe here anymore. And then I look what happened with the beautiful young children killed in Israel in the soccer field. And they definitely say it was a Falab rocket, and it was definitely by the Iranians. So are they wise to be moving there at this time with Kamala, as maybe next president?
Wise to be. Look, the enemy must be destroyed. Thank you all.